We're living through a moment when faith and politics are getting harder to tell apart, and not in a good way. Fear is driving more decisions than love, and certainty is crowding out curiosity. And power keeps dressing itself up in spiritual language. Just People is a podcast for people who feel that tension and want to embrace what Brueggemann called the prophetic imagination. Rooted in faith and committed to honest conversation, we explore what it actually means to follow Jesus when truth, freedom, and belonging are up for grabs. Because what you believe about God doesn't stay in the pew. It shows up in how you love your neighbor, how you hold power, and how you engage people who are different from you, and what you demand from the laws and leaders that shape our common life. This isn't a show about having all the right answers. It's about asking better questions. Questions like, is this what faith is supposed to look like? And where's the line between conviction and control? What does it mean to be faithful in a democracy? We believe faith was never meant to be a private or passive matter. And we believe that ordinary people, just people, have both the capacity and the responsibility to resist authoritarianism and defend human dignity and build something worth belonging to. So, welcome to the Just People podcast with Cece Jones Davis. I'm our co-host, John Mays, and with us today is our very first guest in our inaugural conversation, Danny Bryant. Is that Danny? Like I said, we've been friends for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Are you Danny? Are you Reverend Danny?
Danny's great.
Danny
great.
DT
A lot of titles, but Danny's great. And
Thank you for being with us, Danny.
Yeah.
We're thrilled
Thank
to
you so
have
much.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Well, Danny, we'd love just to start off with getting to know you a little bit. So you have a fascinating story, and so I don't want to put you on the clock.
Yeah.
But if you want the full story, we'll talk about Danny's book later. But give us the cliff notes. How did we get here, Danny?
Yeah. So currently, I am a priest and an abbot bishop here in Nashville in the Episcopal Free Fellowship, and then also part of the Carrion Network, which is where we met. Abbot bishop over something called the Order of Berrigan and Day, named for Dorothy Day and Daniel Berrigan, two Catholic anarchists. I know Dorothy's an anarchist. Daniel, I think he is too. But yeah, just trying to find in that introduction appropriate ways to use power, to consider power. If we say that, in the Lord's Prayer, that the power and the glory are God's, what is that power? And so to use it for good and for love is what Berrigan and Day is trying to do. I serve at a church called St. Mary of Bethany Parish, trying to do the same thing, call ourselves a place for the displaced, really hope to be that faithfully, including ourselves, the parts of ourselves that feel pretty displaced at times. And then I do spiritual direction. I wrote the book. I've got lovely wife and 4 kids, and they're like, my youngest will be a teenager 2 weeks from yesterday. So oldest is 20. So we're in that challenging, beautiful, stormy stage of life. Yeah, that's probably the quickest synopsis. It is a lot. It is a lot.
4 kids. Your youngest, did you say in high school?
She'll be 13 in about 2 weeks, and she'll be an 8th grader. Our only girl. So we got 3 boys, girl, and she is scrappy.
Yes.
In the best way. Yeah.
Especially at 13. My daughter was so scrappy when she was 13.
Yeah.
She was kind of a bit, but she was scrappy.
Yeah. It's an important part of the bio, having a scrappy daughter. Yeah.
We have the same family dynamic almost. Like, so we have 3 sons and 1 daughter, but our daughter is the oldest. So good times.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I think when we'll ask the layup first before we get into the gritty piece of it. When you think through like faith, politics, also already love the fact that like we weren't 5 minutes in before we're dropping the word anarchy in the faith podcast. Like I love that. So we're going to hold on to that because that's going to be a great question later. When you think through faith, politics, legislation, how does faith fit in that? When we think through, I know in like our current climate, we constantly hear separation of church and state, and we hear it from both sides, and we say it when it fits us, but often when it serves us, we don't necessarily hold that same thing. So I'd just be curious, like what your thoughts are in how does our faith like fit in these 3 spheres?
I think it really does come to that word power and what does it mean? And I think good faith, faithful faith is the person with the most power always has the responsibility to distribute that power for equity, equality, justice. And so the political question, I'm sorry, we're going back to anarchy and we can still punt on the question too till later, but You obey the just laws and you disobey the unjust laws. And when the unjust law, which it always does, requires you to sacrifice a person, you would never, following Jesus, sacrifice a person for him, even if that means the Sabbath, right? Like, what law is more holy
That's right.
in Judaism than the Sabbath? And if he says it's a person over that law, we walk through the world seeking everyone to have the power, the opportunities, the resources to thrive and flourish. Everyone we meet, we hope that for. So if we have more power in a situation, it's not to keep, but it's to give away. I think that's the heart of Jesus. It just, yeah, the idea that Jesus came to earth to have us consolidate power it's comical. I mean, it's just like, it is absolutely ridiculous. And so to follow him into these places, asking the question, where do I give power away? And yeah, I truly think it's the easy burden, the light yoke, or the easy yoke, the light burden to not try to hoard, because of what we immediately become less human when we hoard power.
We immediately become less human when we hoard power. I love that. That's for a t-shirt.
Let's do it.
That's really, really good. I'm really interested in your story. I know we hopped into some deep things right away, but if you're like me, where you are today in your theology and your philosophy around life and public life, has been on quite a journey because, mine has. Interested in your spiritual journey and how you got here, wherever
Yeah.
here is. Like, how did you get here?
So born into a cult in Southern California, about 30 to 40 miles east of LA. And my parents were born into it. I think all of my grandparents joined. One of my grandparents might have been born into it. It
Okay,
gets
wait
a
a
little
minute.
fuzzy.
Wait
Yeah.
a minute. Wait a minute. Now, okay, wait a minute. You said that a little nonchalantly. So let's
Well,
go. You were born into a cult.
a religious cult. Yeah. Pseudo-Christian. I call it pseudo-Christian, quasi-Pentecostal, and very United Statesian
Okay.
cult.
And what did the cult believe?
Not a lot of good. The Christian part was, we did have Jesus as part of it, but in terms of like the Orthodox church history view of Jesus, we didn't. He's almost more like Islam in a sense, more of a prophet, more of, or maybe Mormonism, somebody that helps us out, and like, at times even a competitor. Like, we were told we had to be morally perfect like him.
Mhm,
And if I would say, like, I don't think I can be,
mhm.
it would be like, well, Jesus did it. It wasn't like, not for us in the sense of a life for us, which again, theologically, we can talk about that and what we are all, struggling with. What does that substitution mean? But he was kind of a competitor and a guilter. It was almost like he opened a portal for us to be something
Yeah.
through the power of the Spirit, not for us to be safe or loved without a performance. And we believed we had to speak in tongues to have the Holy Ghost. I was a super shy kid, very introverted. The idea of somebody in my face trying to get me to speak in tongues or being up in front of everyone was just so awful. But I loved God and I wanted what I was told God was. And so, morally perfect, we were it. I mean, this guy had enough control in our lives to move us. So 400 people left LA and moved to Nashville when I was a freshman in high school. This guy told people like what colored carpet they could have, what they could wear, what we could wear, I was invited to go to the Rose Bowl when I was 10 years old, coming off a rough stretch. I don't know how much we'll talk about my childhood. My mom married my dad. She was 16. He was 23. She couldn't go on a date till she was 16, but could get married, like the next week. Just insane. Yeah, just a lot of hard things happened, and the cult leader knew that. And I always loved sports, which sports weren't allowed in the cult. And I was invited to go to the Rose Bowl. I was 10 years old, 9 or 10 years old. And I was going to get to stand on the sideline. And I asked my parents if I could go, and they made me ask him.
Oh,
My dad largely driving that. And he said no. This like creepy old man who looked like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons looked at this 10-year-old kid who he knew, very close details of what had been hard in my life. And
mm,
just that kind of control. And I think swimming in the waters of power and trying these faith questions, like everything, the waters I swam in were abusive. And so to have like out of the gate, just abuse everywhere, watching it, wondering, how do you as a powerless child navigate this, sort of try to balance the scales to be safe for others to be safe, whether that's, we were in church 12 hours a week. So it was coming from all directions, and just sort of like, my son's a hockey player, the phrase, like, you skate with your head up, head on a swivel, you're always looking. And so I just developed this awareness of, okay, this is what's going on. And an awareness of, I can't do anything about this right now, but I'm taking notes, and someday I will be able to. That part of my personality is very always observing and just kind of waiting for the moment to say this isn't right. And to step into those spaces throughout life, leaving the cult. The book explores how I kind of just kept joining the same cult, whether that was the PCA, and it's like another reform movement that says, as long as it's in charge, everything will be okay, or the Anglican Church in North America. I just kept joining better, they put on a better face than the cult. But at the end of the day, it's like, oh, this is the same thing, which is, I think, the heart of white Christian America.
Goodness gracious, that's fascinating. So I got to know this part. How did you come out of the first cult? Let's go back to the first cult.
Yeah, cult number one. It's like a game
How
show. I'll
did
take
you?
door number one.
Yes. How did you come out of cult number one?
I met people who weren't part of it and very quickly realized they're wrong about these people. Who else are they wrong about? And that mixed with the move. And after the move to Nashville, a lot of things that they were able to keep hidden from folks in the community started to come out. The older man started to have less ability to control details, found out about sexual abuse, found about just every kind of abuse and evil. And so realizing they're wrong about people that I love. And now I'm finding out that there have been no ethics this whole time. We can't go to a movie, right? I can't go see Cool Runnings. That was my first movie, which is amazing. I think I was a sophomore in high school. And you couldn't go see Cool Runnings, but this guy was covering up sexual abuse. And just as those things became more apparent and in our face, and then back to where we're living right now politically, I mean, people were fine with sexual abuse as long as they got to keep their worldview that told them that they were superior to a world that they don't have to engage with because of their superiority. And I think that cult-like thing that we're existing in right now, I saw the same thing. It's pretty traumatic to see the Trump regime and the Epstein stuff and all of it. Just like, as long as the old guy lets us keep some sort of false superiority, he can do whatever he wants, and it's justified. Seeing that with people I loved, and I was shocked that people cared more about those things. When I left the cult, there was a man, and I started like calling out some of the stuff. I was young, I didn't always do it well, but somebody needed to do it. And but there was a man who pulled me aside one time, and he goes, I was calling out things, and he said, "We are these things." And just that phrase, like, we're not people, we're not humans, we're not in relationship. We are these things that we believe. And to question them is to question our very being. That one stuck with me. And so, I'm kind of ranting at this point, but it, just seeing that over and over again made it impossible to hold both. You had to start pretending that you didn't see it to live within it, or believe something different, even though you don't fully know yet what you believe, but you know it's not that.
Mm-hmm.
And so to keep following that it's not that, and love, which it is sort of the tension of the road I find myself still navigating.
Listen, I could get stuck right there all for the rest of the
Yeah.
time. We could talk about the cult for the rest of the time.
Mhm.
But
I'm here for whatever.
if there's anyone who would know a cult when they see it, Danny, I think it would be you.
Pretty quick radar.
Pretty quick radar. And so I heard you mention a moment ago just it's kind of the time we're living in now, and the things that you feel like people have kind of succumbed to. Why do you think why do you think people have succumbed to the Trump administration? Why do you think people gravitate? How did we get here in your mind?
I think it's in the DNA of the United States. I think it's in the DNA of humanity. Like we want to have safety. We want to feel safe. And
Yeah.
that often means somebody's got to be scapegoated because we are scarcity minded animals. And so I think in the United States, the launching point of this project from the European place was we will go there, we'll start over, we'll be in charge, and then we'll be a city on a hill. And that was a lie then. That was a misuse of power then. And James Baldwin calls it the price of the ticket is to come here and then be white, to buy into that project. And so it creates a society built on what we're not, which again, I just talked about that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. I think there's a difference between I don't want to be like that and a refusal to admit, but I'm part of that. I think like if I look back at the cult and the places I've been, they're all part of the Christian tradition. Like to say they're not, I think is sowing the seeds of our next disaster. But to say that's part of the Christian tradition, if it were its entirety, I'd be out. I'd be done. Like this would not be worth our time. But it's not the entirety, but it's part of it. And so I think these movements won't admit they're part of something in the complicity and the beauty and just the humanity of it all. And that is such a lot. You can't look at the world and believe you're not part of it without the seeds of the lie taking place. James
Mhm.
Baldwin talks about the lie, the lie of the United States mixed with these things that we profess that would actually be healing and freeing. But people are so susceptible to knowing something someone else doesn't know and then being
Mhm.
the guardians of those things. And we're the indispensable. There's a quote I use, Madeleine Albright, Bill Clinton, Secretary of State, was being asked about the war. I think it was in Iraq. No, it would have been before that. It might not even been the Middle East. It might have been like Croatia, Bosnia. But she said that the United States is the indispensable nation. We see farther and higher than every other nation. So if we deem the use of force is necessary, then it is. And the whole world depends on us being that indispensable nation. This is a Democrat, right? This is not MAGA. This is that belief. And so we are so susceptible to that. At the end of the day, we have the biggest weapons. That's why we talk like that, not because we have the most virtue
Yep.
or character or experience. And so the deeper we go into the lie of that, the more our ignorance becomes willful. I have a friend named Anna Cottle. She calls it weaponized naivete. Sorry, I can like quote too often. I can get going, but there's a John Steinbeck quote in a book called To a God Unknown, where it says about this guy, he's dating a teacher, courting a teacher. This is before dating, but she's trying to teach him things that she knows. And Steinbeck writes of this character, the only date he knew was 1776. An
Mm.
ignorant man, really. And it's that ignorance. He's not a stupid guy. He's a very smart character in the book. He's very intelligent, but he's not learned. He won't learn things. He feels insecure when his, fiance tells him something he doesn't know. So he's like, there's only one date that matters. It's 1776. Whatever that is, Jesus isn't God. Like we were so proud to know that, and the world needed to know that. And until we told them, we were superior to them. And it just feels powerful. It feels special. It feels unique. It feels safe. And again, I keep saying this, but it's a lie, and everybody knows it's a lie. And everybody doubles down on it till the point where we say we are these things. So I think it's so human in our less virtuous places to crave that kind of safety that the lie provides for us.
Yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense.
So we'll loop back to Anarchy. I think the
Mm.
first time I heard Anarchy in a faith context was Jason Petty propaganda, if you're familiar with him. And he was just like, I don't know what to tell you. He's like, Jesus was an anarchist. Like,
Huh.
and I was like, leaning it, tell me more. Because it's like when like I'm almost 50 but outside of like countercultural movements that I would only read about, like I wasn't around in the 60s. When I would hear anarchy as, a middle class white guy, my mind goes to Watts. My mind goes to Rodney King verdict. My mind goes to Minneapolis. Like this is the idea of anarchy, and anarchy is like this violence, this like complete unrest and destruction. But then Prop started talking about it's like, man, I just watched Anarchy in the Best Ways during the California wildfires. He said, before anybody could get here, locals organized and people were providing needs and we created shelters. And all anarchy means is there's just not authority at the top. It's a communal experience and we all trust each other and we take care of each other. Nobody has to be in charge. It's like, as someone who lives in Oklahoma and has been like boots on the ground for F5 tornadoes, I'm like, I've seen that. It is actually more functional and more helpful with rest lead tape before the Red Cross gets here and all the organizations. And so like I love that definition. Does that match the definition as you kind of think through anarchy, or do you have a different spin on it?
Yes. I mean, I think that Dorothy Day talks about anarchy in her book, The Long Loneliness, and talks about it's the freedom to spontaneously collaborate with anyone. So you're looking for me, anarchy is Christian anarchy, especially because committed to nonviolence. This is another thing we can circle back to, but I mean, I think following Jesus, there are times where property is up for destruction, like turning over the tables in the temple. Like that is not, I wouldn't do this to a person, but you have valued this over people. And so I do think there is a place for property to come into the conversation of what needs to be
I have
handled
never,
or talked
ever,
to
ever heard of
in certain ways.
dissected
But
Danny.
not to lead with it. But the freedom to spontaneously collaborate with anyone. I really think what the Trump regime is showing us, one of the things is like law and order is a myth used by the powerful to keep people in places, to create criminals, because capitalism needs people in jail, providing
Yep.
cheap labor to produce this kind of wealth. So the creation of criminals has more to do with law and order than justice. It's anarchy. Like the Trump stuff is anarchy. It's the anarchy of the wealthy. They do whatever they want, and wealth is king and wealth is God, and it's served. I think that the way I've started to try to understand it or stepped into is it's the anarchy of the wealthy or the anarchy of the children. And I think Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is the anarchy of children. And so what I think kids have that we lose is innocence. And I don't think of innocence as never having done something wrong, but just this like basic human, we really don't know what we're doing. This is Jesus on the cross. Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They're innocent, not of
Yeah.
what they're doing to me, but of really understanding what they're doing to me. And so to freely, spontaneously collaborate with anyone is to believe there's an innocence in every person. I think of Trump's mugshot. He's an absolute moron in that picture. He's trying to look cool and tough, and he's like, I'm big and tough and mean. There's an innocence in that picture. You have no idea what you look like right now. I won't call him a child because I have a high regard for children, but he's a brat, in that picture. And it's like, dude, just have some innocence. Lean into this. You look ridiculous. Stepping into those places, I think, is Christian anarchy, to say there's an innocence here. I want to look for it and I want to work with that innocence. I think of, the Buddha in me bows to the Buddha in you, or whatever we put into that. I think the innocence in me bows to the innocence in you, and to look for that. And then to say, can we work together in our innocence really for the children
That's really
rather than the wealthy?
Can I interject here, Daniel?
Yeah, please.
You said, I call you Daniel, but your name is Danny. I don't know if your name is
nothing bothers me.
Okay. All right. A few things that you have said that are over here rocking my world, and you're just like flying by them. First of all, I have never heard a white person talk about property could be disposable in some kind of way. Whenever communities of color are marching, raging, rioting, whatever you want to call it, because something terrible has happened to us, to somebody in our community, and somebody breaks a window or somebody, sets something on fire or whatever, the number one thing that I have always heard from white people is, well, why would you burn down your own community?
Uh-huh.
What did Target ever do to you? Grabbing of the pearls, not at the dead body in the street, right? But the window that's broken and the Target that doesn't have as many TVs in it that it did yesterday, and so it's very, very interesting to hear a white person with that perspective. That's number one. Number two, you're talking about innocence. Let's go back to innocence. You said in Trump's photo, and
Yeah.
it was like a mugshot photo where he's trying to be cool and appeal to whoever he's trying to appeal to, that you could see innocence. That's a real interesting thing considering that it was a mugshot. Okay, first
Yeah.
of all. But let's go back to that. When you say innocence, what do you mean?
We don't know. I think as I was reading the description of your podcast, this certainty is a lie. Like it is a lie. It's not real. None of us have it. The second we say we have it, we have partnered with a lie. So that kind of innocence, wonder, childhood,
Okay.
it's seeing the world with an admission that we don't know everything,
And
which
you're saying, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish that.
which is the gift of humanity. The wonder is the soul. The wonder is where we can connect because we all have something the other doesn't. And that's not a threat. That's a joy.
Yes.
That's for true relationship. That's community. It's what the beloved community has that the people who clutch their pearls over Target can't.
Well, I love that you can see that in the president. I really do. We don't hear that often, right?
Well,
That
I'm
you
not
can,
saying he's not guilty. I mean, he's
Right,
guilty.
I understand,
Right.
but you're saying that
Yeah.
you see that innocence, that wonder, that childlikeness, and you got to look mighty, mighty deep these days to be able to see that. I really am inspired by it because at the end of the day, we are all just people, right?
Yes.
Flawed with our issues. My issues might not be his may not be mine. His may be on public display in a way that mine are not, right? But at the end of the day, we're all just people trying to feel our way through the world. Now we're trying to pretend like we're certain about it, but we're not. So that's inspiring.
It's hard too. I mean, it's naming names. It's easier for me to see the innocence in Donald Trump than it is JD Vance because one of them's smart, and I think like back to Jesus and the way he says we'll be judged is like, if you know more and you don't do it, it's going to be way worse for you than if you didn't know. I don't think Donald Trump has got a drop of intelligence. And so there's something in him that is like easier to access for me, the innocence. I think so many of these guys are just used by an evil system because they think they're smart. They're not. There are smart people behind them who are evil and doing these things on purpose. But yeah, the innocence, it's harder to find in some than in others.
Yeah, I'll say this, an observation I have, and it's a theory, but I think the most harmed individuals that are masking the deepest pain and the most unhealed are the most useful for institutions. As a pastor, so many things that I would go along with that I never critically thought of or didn't even like passively think of. I was like, I don't know, it's just what the paper said when I signed my belief statement. So this is what I parrot, this is what I say. There's something about keeping you in that insecurity, in that fear, not actually teaching you of the sozos of Jesus, the healing, the wholeness that can come, because then the critical thinking, the agency comes back. And so when I think through that, I think when I look at Trump, I see somebody who's been deeply harmed and who is now very useful. That pain is being exploited because that's what empire does.
Yeah.
So my thought.
I think his orange makeup is his innocence. He looks like a clown. I mean, he is actually putting on clown makeup. I think that's the image of God in him that's saying, I have conspired with such ridiculousness. I have to
Mm.
let it out somewhere. I have to tell on myself. And I think we do that. We tell on ourselves. We will conspire in a sense, but it's like there's something in us that wants to get out to live in the truth. And again, the more we squash that, he has had multiple opportunities to turn from that, especially the bigger he gets in the world, there's more like you could pay attention to something that's true. And I think there's a group, I don't remember what they're called, but they go from town to town and they're singing justice or something. I know they're in Minneapolis, they're here in Nashville recently. And one
Mhm.
of the songs they sing is "It's okay to change your mind." And that's
Yes.
back to repentance and Jesus. He's any time you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. If I haven't been face to face with an ICE agent. There was a day where I thought it might happen, and I was talking to my kids about what is the thing to say? What is the thing to do? One of mine told me I should sprinkle them with holy water, which I thought was pretty brilliant. But yeah, just to say you can change your mind. You don't have to do this. You're a person, not the machinery, not the institution. You're a person. So back to anarchy, anytime the institution would say choose institution over a person, you say no. And one of the reasons I'm still with Jesus is he said, that will come at a great cost. And if you say no to the institution for the person, be prepared for the system to spit you out with the person, which had happened, multiple times. But that's back to that anarchy, always the person,
Okay.
whatever that costs.
Okay, John, I'm sorry, John. I got all kind of questions, but let me
You're
pause.
good.
Did you have a follow-up?
No, roll with it.
Okay, because I can't decide whether to keep going forward or go back, right? Because I'm still
We
at the
could do
cult.
both.
I'm still at the cult. So we're going to jump around just a little bit, okay?
Great.
Because I think there's a lot of people out here that are like you or could be like you in terms of the journey that you have had, the religious journey that you've had, right? And I want to know, because obviously you're very well read, obviously, because I can't quote stuff like that. I read, but I can't, I don't, I got to go back and read the passage. You just spitting off quotes. How did you get yourself out of whatever theological cultish thinking that you were in order to think the way that you do today? How did you do that?
I don't know. I can point, I know character traits that I have. I know my parents, I know my grandparents. I can see where the DNA led to this person that was ready to take on the cult and leave. I think, I don't know. There's survivor's guilt in it, where it's like, how did I I don't know. I don't know. I think the only thing, and again, this is dangerous because I don't think we suffer to learn lessons. Cannot say that strongly enough. I think the institutions use that to harm people. I don't think our suffering, and I do think our suffering opens something in us. And if the deeper you've suffered, I feel like you have to admit, I don't know what other people have to do. I have to admit, I'd rather have not gone through that. And the idea that anyone has to go through those kinds of things. And what it opened for me in these places with God is, if I believe this, I have to believe that God is something that can't speak to the pain.
Mm.
And every time I've left a construct, it has been, this doesn't speak to my pain. It doesn't speak to the pain I encounter in others. So it can't be true. It just can't be. Or God's not good. The border I live on is not so much, is there one or isn't it? There's one. I don't know if he's good. That's where I struggle. Is this a good thing in the world? And if you have to pretend suffering is something that he would be a sadist if that's what he did. And so those pain points, I think that I'm stepping into a place in my faith where it's I'm realizing those things also didn't hold the beauty of God or love or a creation or this gift of being a human being. And I think those things are, you can't take the sorrow and the joy apart, or the beauty. But that's what guided me through it, was that can't be true. God can't be good. That can't be true if it doesn't speak to this pain.
Mm.
And that guiding principle, reality, like gut, I don't know, soul, has probably gotten me here more than anything else.
Have you always been a reader? And how important has reading been for your journey?
More so, reading is a place for my authority issues and my desire to learn things went head to head. Because when I was told what to read in school, I wasn't great at obeying. But I've always been a listener. And so a lot of the things I remember are things I've heard. But then, like, it's so funny, when I was done with college, I started reading constantly. And yeah, like post 26 years old, I've read. And again, that hasn't always been healthy. Like, a lot of that was leaving the cult and thinking knowledge will save me. I think that's a really big part of American cultism. I'll know something you don't know. I'm safe because of what I know. I don't believe that anymore. I don't think I got out of the cult because I was more clever than anybody. And I think I was more clever than the cult leader. That part of me is still there. But like, it's just, it used to be, I have to know so I can't be tricked again. And I kept getting tricked when that's how I thought. But it is just I think now what propels it is the wonder and just the joy of somebody knowing something I don't know is great, not a threat. And so I enjoy it.
Powerful.
And my brain, I can't visualize things. Like, I don't have that. It's like a condition. I can't close my eyes and picture my wife's face. Like, I just can't see things. But my auditory is like, stuff sticks in a way that I think if I could see things, it would take some of that space. Mine works in that very strange.
Wow.
Something you said, I don't want to put it in binaries, but just like observational, kind of run into like two people with faith. You have the people that grew up in it, right, and inherited it. It's like, this is just who we are and what we've done, and a lot of them are still are good people. So like a very simplistic faith, and so I don't say any of that despairingly. But then there's also those who didn't grow up in it and who turn to it because of immense pain.
Mm-hmm.
They've blown up their lives. They've run out of answers, rope, whatever. And what I've observed more often than not, and I think Brueggemann talks about this too, is like God responds to the cry, like to the cry of pain. And like when I'm listening to your story, like one of the things that I can't help but wonder if it isn't the awareness of your own suffering and your own pain that actually leads. Bruce Wochip talks about it like this, like Jesus exists in every single person, and you didn't put him there. Like you didn't invite him in.
Yeah.
And the location is he at the very bottom of that place that you don't want to go to and you don't want to admit happened or you did. That's where it is. Like that's where you find the real thing. And until you go there, you may have the shadow, you may have elements, you may have good practices, but you don't have the healing that comes along with knowing that you've suffered and the compassion that comes with that.
Yeah, it's true prayer. You read the mystics, spend time in those kinds of prayers, the silence. What we discover in the silence is we're all connected.
Hmm.
The solitude connects us. I think I had a therapist one time who talked about, yes, like 100%, the least of these, actually, literally, people in prison, people who are hungry, or the feast, go get everyone and bring them in. But that, yes, literally. And also in the spiritual sense, the parts of ourselves that we would consider the least of these in ourselves, until we invite them into this feast, until we say, oh, Jesus is this part of me too. And then the feast can begin when we're integrated. And then the feast, it begins for all when we're integrated. We talk about hospitality being this idea of like, I've worked out my own stuff, so I don't have to work it out with you or on you when we're together. To incorporate all of ourselves into the feast, even when we don't want to invite parts of ourselves to it. is what I hear and what you're saying. And that's where the healing is, the salvation, the justice. It will arise from integrity, where nobody has to leave a part of themselves outside. That's LGBTQ, all of it. It's like, bring who you are. Jesus is in you. Jesus is the parts of you you don't want in, and watch how we all heal together in those spaces, or watch how toxic we become when when the prerequisite is you have parts that aren't welcome here. It's over before it starts.
Yeah. If we insist that you have to be violent to yourself, it's a matter of time before you will be
Matter of
violent
time.
towards somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every time.
Mr. Danny, you're situated in the South. You're in
Yeah.
Tennessee, right? And that's where you live, that's where you minister. Um, we're I'm doing a lot of work in the South right now because, voter rights and all kind of things have been going on that I believe is an effort to upset free and fair elections
Yes.
that are coming up in November and beyond. And so there's a lot of work, 50 some percent of Black folks in this country live in the South. And so we've had to fight for a long time to make sure that, voting is a real thing for our community. We've had to fight for that. I'm, interested in how you minister or are ministering to people who maybe have very different views than you right now in Tennessee or in the South or
Mhm.
anywhere else, and how you, if you're able to kind of live in community, if you find yourself still able to live in community, if not, and if you are, how?
It's hard. I don't even know where to start. This might be a good time to talk about the reparations initiative. Jamar Tisby was in Nashville 2019, September 2019. And when he was giving, after his lecture on the color of compromise, he spoke to real steps white folks can take for actual justice. And he talked about ecclesial reparations. The church ran cover for all of these things, so the church could redistribute that wealth in repentance for what had happened. He also talked about the disparity that exists between access to mental health counselors for Black people and white people, and like the idea of having to go to a white therapist who doesn't understand or even think systemic racism is real and have to share trauma, of living in this society. And he's like, that's something that needs to be fixed. And so our church took a step to create something called the Equitable Healing Reparations Initiative, EHRI, where we paid loan debt of Black therapists as repentance. I think over 2.5 years, like $150,000 came through that. That was mind blowing. Like one person's complete loans were paid off, and then another person's a big chunk of it. That has become a foundation called the Black Mental Health Counselor Reparations Foundation, Black led. We've got a Juneteenth breakfast in the morning we're excited about. We're doing supervision grants, we're doing loan debt relief, and we're doing scholarship. I think leadership, I think of the Malcolm and Martin in America. I am drawn to Malcolm X. The cult part of me is drawn to Malcolm X from the standpoint of this is such a big statement, but you're not going to win an argument with these folks in ideas. There's got to be data. So Malcolm X saying, we got to go build something. Sure. Sit-ins. Sure. Appeal to a conscience that not sure it's there. But data is something that you've got to argue with in a different way. So I think our step was do reparations, take that step, build data, relationships. The women that I co-founded this foundation with, we didn't know each other. And I don't know that we would have met had there not been repentance. Bonhoeffer talks about cheap grace. I think in the United States, we've got cheap reconciliation. White folks, I said, I'm sorry, I'm not part of it. I don't believe that anymore. I did 6 years of 6 books about racism. I'm Rosa Parks now. Like, until that's cheap reconciliation, do something, and do something financial, because the wealth gap And back to property, these are people who were treated as property, and they're more offended by a brick going through Target's window than making people property, which is, again, back to the heart of whiteness and this whole thing. But it's got to be data. And then the people, I heard a phrase on a podcast this week, a guy who was part of Occupy Wall Street, and I forget the other move he was part of. Yeah, I don't remember which one, but he said, we failed. He's like, we didn't, like we failed. It didn't work. He said, but we changed the common sense. There's a Peter Morin who worked with Dorothy Day to start the Catholic Worker. He said that we are trying to arouse conscience. I don't know what we can change, but we can change the common sense and we can arouse conscience. So in the South, and again, I would add like a willingness to be scapegoated. I think of Howard Thurman. He goes, everybody is invited, but we don't know Jesus until we're knowing him with those whose backs are against the wall. So there's a universal invitation to everyone. Come be a part of this, but we're standing over here.
Yes.
A lot of people are not.
Yeah.
But that's just part of it. I'm pretty convinced. I'm kind of done trying to convince someone to do it. I'm pretty convinced. Go create data that changes the common sense. Invite, but be prepared to have fewer people at your party. The narrow road is the universal invitation, but we're standing over here.
Yeah.
And
true.
so it's hard. I'm getting older. That's harder than it used to be for me. Like it's harder.
Yeah.
But it also, I can't imagine doing it the other way. I know what that is. I don't have a lot of certainty about what God is or love fully is, but I know what that other thing is, and I don't have any energy or interest in it. So there's a lot of tensions in it. But you do find something real, and when you find something real, fake isn't a substitute.
You almost sound like a mystic, Danny. You keep moving towards those experiences and relationships, and I'm like, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I'm a hopeful mystic. I feel like somebody told me yesterday, if somebody says they're a mystic, they're not a mystic. So I will let the jury decide if I am or not. I'm superstitious. Where does that go? But yeah, I am. Something has loved me through all of this. Jesus is a unique expression of that love, who I have loved. And Jesus protects me from, this is Willie James Jennings in his book, After Whiteness. 3 times in the book, he talks about his anger, and he says, Jesus protects me. I get choked up with this part, but the 3rd time he says, it's my faith in Jesus, no Jesus, who protects me from the anger. That part of me, it's there. I write in the book about like really becoming a pastor so I could be Batman and like get the bad ones from the inside. And like, that is in me. I think it's healing. I hope it's healing, but Jesus protects me from that and frees me to be loving more than vengeful. And so, yeah, the mysticism is, I've been protected in the midst of all of it.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Danny, I talking to a group of people earlier today about Juneteenth and all that Juneteenth means, to me and to the Christian life and all of that. And someone asked me a really great question about how do I continue to have conversations or attempt to have conversations with people who I believe are on the wrong side of history right now? And how do I continue to find patience or, whatever, so that I can still having these same conversations with people who are very different than I am. And, I appreciated the question because it's not like I haven't asked myself, like, why are you still talking to these people? Like, what is it that you really, like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Right? What I said to her was, every time I'm in a conversation, I start to get frustrated. The prayer comes back to my heart. That's a short prayer, but profound. And I try to say it every day, multiple times a day. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And it's something about that that recenters me, regrounds me, refocuses me, and reminds me that, you know, I'm on the same playing field in a lot of ways. There's a lot in the world that I don't know that somebody could come teach me, and maybe I'm resistant to, or, but you know, this whole fact that we're all flawed and we're all struggling with our humanity and warring with the spirit is how I would talk about
Yeah.
it. It brings me back to a place where I can have some conversations, and I don't have to and I don't have to just sit over in this camp, which is super, super comfortable for me, right?
Hmm.
And do no outreach at all. There's something about Christ that like pushes me and compels me to talk to people and try to understand and try to love people who, are not like me, because I mean, who am I, right? But in any case, I also resonate with what you're saying about some folks just ain't coming, you know?
Nope. And I like some folks aren't coming to my invitation. I
That's
wonder,
right. That's good.
like, there are people, honestly, like, back to, I mean, like, if I could talk to Trump or JD Vance with some hope, it would be Trump. I could connect with him in a way that I don't think I could connect with JD. Like, I think some of that means I'm probably not the one to talk to JD. I don't think either of them is calling me. But, like, there are people we can connect with. I think, John, when we were at that conference in Oklahoma, like, the quantum physics of it all, the atomic connections that we have or we don't have, I do think the spirit is drawing us. And I think sometimes wisdom is like, oh, I don't love this person. I'm probably not the one
Mm,
to speak to them. But a faith in the God who is love is like, God will send somebody. I
mm,
think the resurrection, like, one of the reasons I still feel so, in awe and love of the resurrection is like my dad died. Like, there's stuff we couldn't talk about here. It was not going to happen here. I think we've got eternity to have that conversation in the presence of love.
mhm,
Before it says there are no more tears, it says every tear will be wiped away. Every tear that justice demands be cried will be cried and wiped away by love. And so that space of like, yes, like Dr. King, the fierce urgency of now, 100%. Yes, the fierce urgency of now. And sometimes the now is a wisdom of, okay, what's happening now is something that I will make worse,
mhm,
by getting involved in this way. And so the freedom in that space too, you talk about Brueggemann. Brueggemann talks about, you think about the decisions you're making for love and justice and ask yourself, am I making this decision in freedom? And to have that space through prayer and that quiet and the prayer that you shared, that one used to wreck me because it felt so like self-debasing, and it felt like, oh, this is the stuff I grew up in. But when it shifted to how you described it, is this is my connection to everyone, I'm just one of these people, it shifts to a freedom that can discern in the moment, like, oh, I'm not going to be the one. I'm going to make this person hate me even more, or the thing I love, or reparations. There are people that it's like, I don't know, you can kind of sniff it out. Like, will it help? But that freedom to be part of it all, like, Jesus lets the rich young ruler go.
Mhm. I think proximity and presence is important. And I think we complicate that with language sometimes and our agenda, like our own insecurities. Because, like, Robert Farrar Capon
Hmm.
talks about, like, the older brother standing outside of the party, right? And the beauty in Jesus's proximity. And so he even, like, his theology of hell, which is like the sweetest, most gentle theology of hell I've ever heard, is that hell exists in the left hand, in the scar of the left hand of Jesus. And he
Hmm.
walks around this dinner party, and everybody who isn't ready to come in and experience this radical love and reconciliation, he shields them. Like, he just like walks around and protects them from experiencing this party, and then just constantly steps outside and checks back in and is like, are you ready? Do you want to come in? And I think the thing is, like, often our presence to these people that we, whether they're family members, people we go to church with, that we fundamentally disagree with, isn't to keep having the conversation to change their mind, but maybe just to keep finding a reason to be present and be around and bear witness to their humanity too, in hopes of like the spirit actually doing the work, to where one day they're going to be like, can you tell me what it's like in that room y'all keep going into? Can you tell me what it's like
Mhm.
to stand with those whose backs are against the wall?
Mm.
Like it reminds me of yesterday. So I do chaplaincy work at a shelter, and we just voted down minimum wage increase in Oklahoma again.
Mm.
And so many of these folks are working 2 or 3 of those jobs and still can't afford housing because they're paying off fines and court costs for stuff that I did in my 20s and 30s, but
Yeah.
nobody over polices suburbia, right? So I never had any of those interactions. And what I realized when, like, every time I'm there, there's this free market. There is this sharing of goods
Mhm.
and services. Somebody went to Skyline and drug all the food that they had left over from something they had done earlier, and they're like just handing it out. What do you, well, I've got some socks, and it's, what do I have? Whatever I have is yours, and whatever you have is mine. And here is the societal least of these who have already implemented the type of a like economical system of caring for each other and everyone, whether it's your first night there or you've been there for a year, and we're over here in abundance with this scarcity mindset and unwilling to share with anyone. And so it's like,
Okay.
we need to keep proximity to the powerful in hopes that we'll be able to point them to the rooms where the least of these are. But honestly, it's the least of these, in my opinion, that are going to keep showing us where the gospel is and how it works.
And to, in those places, to speak truth to. I was invited, somebody in the cult who's got authority, to the extent it's still going on, sent like kind of a proxy saying, would you want to get together, like with me? And could I share my phone number with him? And I said, my email's pretty hard. My email's pretty easy to find. If he wants to get together, he can email me. And if he wants to talk about how to make proper restitution for the people that the institution that he now leads perpetuated in our lives, if he wants to have that conversation, I'm up for it. If he wants to get together and like talk theology or like catch up on life, I'm not going. So right or wrong, maybe that was wrong of me, but like I think the day I meet with him to just be pals, I have
Mm.
scapegoated the people. And I
Mm.
would say even scapegoated part of myself. I'm up. You say when you want to have a real conversation.
Yeah.
But part of standing with those whose backs against the wall in that is to tell him this is the truth you will encounter.
That's
That
it.
I think you have to be in a relationship. We got to look at the truth together. I think there's this interesting balance, right? Between, and I don't think everybody has to be me in that situation, but my experiences have led me to one of my heroes in the Bible is Uriah the Hittite, which I don't know if we have to edit this or how we're doing on time, but I was an elementary school Bible teacher for years. And this little boy heard parts of the story of David and Bathsheba and Uriah the Hittite. And just after school, he was just like sitting, I think like at a tire shop with his mom or oil change, and his head was down. And she goes, buddy, what's the matter? And he goes, I'm just thinking about Uriah the Hittite. This like little guy. But anyways, this guy who David is like, get in this lie with me.
Yeah.
You know what's happening. Everybody in the palace knows what's happening. Just get in the lie and you'll be fine. And he's like, I'm sleeping on the porch.
Mm. Mm.
Kill me. I am not getting in the lie. And I think that whatever that looks like in our lives, to recognize the lie and say, I'm just not getting in the lie. If I got to sleep on the ground, we'll sleep on the ground. Like that interaction with the powerful of, I'm here, but I'm not in that with you. I'm not above it. I've been part of it. It's, it's like propelled me. There's stories in my book about like, I got a job when a Black Catholic woman didn't, and I didn't have to have a theological interview, and they said she wasn't Christian. And that wasn't providence, right? That was me in the lie at a time when I didn't know that lie,
Right.
which there's no excuse for me to not know that lie. The evidence was there for me to know that lie, and I didn't see it. Anyways, I think that guiding principle of, when does relationship become conspiracy?
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
And to have a relationship that never hopefully conspires is a hope.
That makes I
When does
think,
relationship become
When does it ask you to conspire with someone to scapegoat, to keep somebody out, to consolidate power? And so to guard our relationships from being that kind of conspiracy.
yeah, I think it's similar to like the pattern I see, like every time Jesus hosts a dinner party, it's always the least of these that are invited and some other folks can come, but like this is where it's at. But from time to time, like every third chapter, he'll go to theirs. Like he'll like,
Yeah.
oh, you invited me, I'll come. I'm going to make it awkward, but like,
Huh.
but I'll come and
Yes.
I'll answer your questions. And so there's that. It's the weirdness of Jesus. Like I think it was up until this year, I was like, Jesus doesn't play sides, and I'm like, no, he does. I just wish he didn't. But like, no, he absolutely does, and it is the powerless, but he's fluid in it, and he asks us to be fluid in it. But it's like home base. It's not
Which
where
I
you
think
came from.
it's just the truth, right?
Mhm.
Like the more power we consolidate, back to James Bald, like that's the lie gets bigger. We are all powerless. So live in the light of that. As I like move towards 50, John, with you, around 40, it was just very clear. Like there are people who are starting to realize control's an illusion. And there are people who are doubling down. And relationship and community in those spaces, it might be impossible. Once you're realizing like, oh, powerlessness is like actually true, it becomes so difficult to connect in those places. But yeah, totally agree. It's the come to the awareness, come to the powerlessness. That's where Jesus is. And that's the way, the truth, and the life and freedom.
tell us about your book?
Yeah. So a lot of it is this. I don't think that this is salvageable. Thank you. I don't think it's reformable. I don't think it can be restored. I think it is such a death cult. I think it is. I got to ask Willie James Jennings, is it already dead? This white Christian nationalist experiment. Is it already dead and it's just a zombie walking around consuming everything in its path? Or is it dying? If it's dying, could it enter into hospice to die with dignity? And his answer was it's got enough money to pretend it's alive, which is just devastatingly true. I don't think there's any argument in that space. And so the book came from that and a poem he wrote. He wrote about the Jesus instituting communion and saying he has a dream in both hands. And what the disciples had to ask themselves was, he says, eat this dream and it will kill the dream that kills. And so they had to ask which of our dreams will live and which of our dreams will die. The book is asking white Christian nationalist folks to enter into hospice. And I diagnose it with something called tulip cancer, which is repurposing Calvinism, which is the Puritanism that launched this whole thing. My tulip is total mediocrity, unlimited surveillance, lucrative atonement, perseverance of the lie, and irredeemable masculinity and perseverance of the lie. And that this is the cancer that's replicating, metastasizing. Cancer says, I'm not part of the body, I am the body, and then recruits to that lie, which is back to the sinner's prayer, right? No, I am part of all this, not I'm separate from it. Cancer would say I'm not part of it. And then after walking through tulip cancer, I invite people into a hospice spirituality that is making amends. It's reparations. It's welcoming everybody. It's telling the truth about what's happened. And it's being open to wonder and saying we white folks, Jennings describes or defines whiteness as possession, control, and mastery. And so it is interesting in white spaces to say there's not really a plan. There's not a map. We're going to go and love each other on the way. And our belonging will be each other, our pilgrimage, not what we think, not our possessed truth. And yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of people who can't do it yet. And so to be open to wonder, to say, I don't know the plan, but I know what it's not. And I know that it's love and belonging and beloved community. That's the heart of the book. And it tells my story, but I think it goes into the cult of American religion as much as it goes into the actual cult I grew up.
How do you talked about the fact that that this might not be able to be reformed, like, this might not be salvaged. What's next? What's your imagination for what's next?
My hope is an end to capitalism with a massive wealth redistribution. I think that's what the church is. I think, if you read just the Acts 2 chapter, Pentecost, it's the birth of the church's birthday. And everybody talks about the tongues, which is great. Like, I think what Jesus is doing, what the Spirit is doing there is like redistributing wealth and turning over what we think salvation is and who's in and who's out. But it ends with everybody giving the rich giving the resources so that the poor will have what they need. And this equality and equity all throughout. 5,000 people joined because of that, not, because of Peter's speech. Like, thank you, Peter. Look what people are doing. And so I think the church is I'm in this Episcopal world, pretty Catholic in progressive Catholic spaces are where I find myself mostly. But the Eucharist, this meal that we receive together, is a non-capitalistic, everyone is invited meal. And I think the implications of that put the church in a very unique spot to be able to look at wealth and say, let's redistribute it. How many churches do you know have like mostly older people who are saying, how can we get young people in a world where many of these people have multiple homes and these kids are growing up in a housing crisis? So it's like, yeah, I'm going to spend $800 to see Phoebe Bridgers because I'm never going to have a house. So I might as well go to this concert. How do we convince the aging with multiple houses that the housing crisis, if John the Baptist said, give your coat away because somebody doesn't have one, like, maybe share a bedroom. Like, that's my hope. I think that's Jesus's hope. I think that's pretty evident that what Jesus was saying was hospitality, giving and receiving. There is hope where there's hospitality. There is no hope, and shake the dust when there's not. So yeah, that's what I hope it looks like. I don't think anyone can. I think people need to organize that, so I think the church is this, let's organize anarchists. Let's have anarchists meet each other at this table to go out and be nonviolent expressions of this love. I don't know if it's possible, but I think it's like, could we change the common sense toward that? Could we arouse conscience toward that? And really, I think the wealth gap is the moral issue of our time, and the way that the laws put the wealth with the aging, and then the aging fund what the future that they want for people instead of the future the young people are actually asking for. I think back to the sides Jesus takes. I wonder, John the Baptist says, I've come to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children. I wonder if at that point Jesus is like, yes, me too. And then later Jesus says, I came to bring a sword. And he talks, it's generationally how he breaks that down. And it's the young and the old. And I think what he's saying is the old have sided with the establishment. If it's not good for the young people, it's not good. I think when he says, I'm leaving, but you're going to do greater things than me, I think it's this trajectory he knew he was putting the world on. So to do the greater things is to be able to commit greater acts of justice that reach more people. And yeah, that's why I'm still trying the church. I love the people. I love St. Mary's so much, but I think we can do that even in small ways. Non-consolidated power, doing this in Oklahoma City, doing this in Virginia, doing this in Nashville, connecting in these ways. That's the hope.
When you talk about the end of capitalism, so I can think, I know of two people that are immediately going to hear that and be like, is that through the church voluntarily leading people to redistribute through choice and agency? Is it through government and legislation? Is it through both? When you think through the vision of that, how's that work?
I think it doesn't start with the institutions. It starts with the people. And I think the church, obviously my ecclesiology is pretty loose in those spaces. Yeah, the Quakers and the Jesuits need to organize the plan for the church. It's this, again, back to Malcolm X, it's create data that shows what wealth redistribution does. And then, that on that podcast I listened to, they were talking about Mom being elected doesn't happen without Occupy Wall Street. The leader says we failed, but we don't get Mamdani trying socialism in New York, or this influx we have right now in the DSA, like the Socialist Party. we don't get that without the things that failed. I think a willingness to fail in these attempts right now. Bergen a Day, this order that we started in March, over $18,000 has come in since March of 2025. Every dollar goes to the works of mercy. Nobody makes any money off of it. There's no red tape. There's no bureaucracy. We've paid for burials. We've paid for food. We've paid for housing. We've created relationship with people who are imprisoned. Like the church taking non-capitalistic steps. Does Bergen and Day exist in 10 years? I don't know. I don't care. If it's the thing that's becoming, if it's the mustard seed and it's shade for a few birds today and something goes from it, that's the way I understand Jesus. So does that branch off and get into legislation? I hope so. And I'm backing it as it does. I'll go to the Capitol. I'll be part of that. But also, I'm not going to play the game on their grounds. And if they come along into justice, great. That's not where Jesus said he'd be, at the Legislative Plaza, especially in Nashville. But he will be with those who need the representation. Cece, you're talking about voting rights. I mean, what just happened in Tennessee? And the state representative stood up and said he didn't know that Memphis had a majority Black population. I mean, it's just the audacity, right? And these evils. There's no question of who Jesus stands with in that moment. But I think the legislation will have to follow. And in these spaces, do we stay? Do we go? I think I lean towards probably always leave the cult. But I would also say if you have to stay, quit giving it money and watch how you're treated when you don't.
Mm.
Because
Yep.
if you follow money, let money tell on us, and that your citizenship will change when you defund something. And I think that the politicians will follow a movement. But then for us to be willing to resist the thing that it becomes, even if we sowed the seeds for what it was, that for a moment was healthier, that dance is what I think that it requires. And also I think is pretty joyful and fun some of the time.
Danny, how can people find you? John, would you lift up that book again? How can people get this book? Because I know that people need it. I'm going to read it.
I will
it's-
send you a copy. Don't buy it from Jeff Bezos. I am like Mr. Non-Capital Anarchy here. The only place you can buy it is on Amazon. I'm repenting. Yeah, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. A capitalist. But I'm trying. Anyways, the only place to buy it, unless we run into each other somewhere, or I can mail it to you, Cece, I would love to, is on Amazon. Substack, DT Bryant is my Substack
DT Bryant.
title.
What about socials? Are you on socials?
Just Instagram and Threads, I guess, by default Threads. But Instagram, probably it's DT Bryant as well on Instagram. I think that's everything. stmarysnashville.com is the website. I would love for people to know more about Bergen and Day and try to partner together for that kind of justice.
Danny, we sure do appreciate you. You've made our first episode so thoughtful and thought-provoking. I can't wait to read your book, and I really appreciate your journey. I appreciate the fact that you've been in 3 cults and you still love Jesus. I'm fascinated by that alone. So thank you. John, I'm going to turn it over to you. How are you going to close this out?
So I haven't told you this, Cece, but I think since we're dealing with generally on our good days, frustrating topic material, and sometimes it just downright sucks, I think we should end it like asking everybody just briefly where they've seen awe recently. And I'll go just because I already knew the question. That gives you guys more time to think through it. We have a tree in our front yard that in an ice storm, in a thunderstorm, it was uprooted and blown down, and we replanted it, and we were told just take it out and get another one. And it survived. And then we had an ice storm a few years later and it got crowned. So like the whole top like broke, and they're like, that's it for that tree. And I assumed it probably was too, but I was just lazy and I didn't want to dig it out. So I just left it, and it has repaired itself. It is like fully green. It looks like all the other trees on our block. And it's like, I've seen this thing at its absolute worst. And so just like every morning when I leave, it's just this little microcosm of like I did nothing to help the tree. Like I didn't prune it. I didn't water it. when it got knocked over, I put it back and put some dirt around it one time. But like if the tree knows how to rejuvenate itself and become whole and healthy just being a tree, then like how much so do my neighbors know how to do that? And so like maybe my job is just to help like bear witness and support and pay attention and not program. So like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sorry, I just turned that into a whole sermon illustration. Back to the alt part. It's the beauty of this tree just knowing how to care for itself.
You know, I don't know that I've seen all this week. I probably have, but I can't think of an example. The closest memory that I have happened a few weeks ago. All Roads Lead to the South was an effort by just a group of Black women who came together and said, "Hey, we have to start rallying. We have to start, being outside because we need people to know that leaders are not asleep and that there is still hope, right?" And so All Roads Lead to the South was this huge, huge event that happened in Montgomery, Alabama in May, came together in 9 days, and thousands of people showed up to talk about voting rights, to talk about democracy, to talk about civil disobedience, to talk about all sorts of things that I think we need to be talking about right now. And it was so inspiring to see this idea. I was, in the little circle while some of these women were talking about this thing that they felt in their hearts. They needed people to see us outside. And they pulled it off in 9 days, and it was huge. And it has started a movement now. So All Roads Lead to the South is a thing, and there's going to be a thing in a lot of southern cities. So I was really inspired and awe by that.
I'm going to go Jalen Brunson. That guy. I had so much fun watching
Yeah.
him. Just, yeah, I mean, him playing basketball and what he did and how he played and his, I love relentless competitors, and watching him was such a joy. And it was so fun to see New York win that. And I'm sure, John, you didn't mind the Spurs getting knocked off after the
Big Knicks fan for a whole month.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. Also the moon, but we'll just talk about Jalen Brunson, and next time we hang out, we'll explore. I don't know anything about the moon. I'm just like, somebody told me to look at something, and the moon like really grabbed me last night, but
Yeah,
I'm gonna go Jalen Brunson.
that's a good one. That's a real good one.
Good one. Well, Danny, thank you, man. That was it was great to just hear a little bit of your story again and connect, and highly recommend. Like, I've been geeking out over this book for the past couple months, like quoting it often.
This is all reminding me. I'm sorry. I know we're running out of time. Back to non-capitalist. I'm giving away most of my book on my Substack right now. So
True.
if you don't want to buy it and avoid Jeffrey and back to the moon, right? Maybe that's what I'm thinking about, the moon, going there with Jeff and Elon. But I'm on my Substack. I'm giving away most of it, not all of it. I think there's the publisher is very generous to let me do most of it. But yeah, my Substack has the book, and you can definitely get doing kind of a chapter a week. So anyways,
That's cool.
we can run an end around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Danny. We appreciate you, and I will take you up on the offer. I'm going to send you my address because I want the book.
Awesome. Cool. I would be honored for you to read it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Peace and love, y'all.
Peace.
Bye, y'all.